There's a lot of great information out there about learning the didgeridoo, but what I wish I kind of had was to know what are the essential skills, and that's what this video is all about, is showing you everything you need to know so that you can learn the basics of the didgeridoo. So step one, if you're just picking up the didgeridoo, you need to be able to find your drone. Now, what is your drone? Well, it's this sound. You need to get to the point where you can make that consistent drone sound. Now, I'll tell you what a drone sound is not. Basically everything else other than that first sound that I made. So step one to finding your drone is to get the shape of your lips correct. And this is called an embouchure, which just means the position and control of your lips, cheeks, and face and all that apparatus. So the kind of an easy way that I've learned how to make this is to make the sound E and then U. And I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but if you try and talk with this accent, you're on the right track. Notice that the corners of my mouth are drawn in and the center is loose. That's the correct mouth shape for playing the didgeridoo. Don't make this too tight. You can actually feel cramping and it's uncomfortable. It's a comfortable tight, and if you're doing this for the first time, don't sweat it if you don't get it at first. It takes practice. So if you make that sound, and then the next step is to buzz. And a lot of people have questions as far as like how tight they need to buzz and how loose. And so I'll give you an example. Your buzz for the didgeridoo, that's actually how you make the sound when you put the didgeridoo to your lips. You're buzzing your lips together like this. With your lips pulled in, as you see here, and the center of your lips are loose. You don't want to be buzzing down here like a horse, and you don't want it to be up here like a fly. It's somewhere in the middle, and there's a range because there's different didgeridoos, and all of them require a different tightness of the embouchure. So your mileage may vary, but somewhere in the middle you'll find this sound with that appropriate tightness of your lips. When you play, don't puff out your cheeks like. It's tempting because when you watch other people play, you notice that there is a lot of cheek puffing going on, but even still, you can still keep the corners of your mouth firm. It's important to make sure that you maintain that shape so that you don't blow out your lips and get a poor sound. So all that together, you put the didgeridoo lightly to your lips and then you play. So a lot of people have trouble with this step. It looks easy for when I'm doing it, but if you're doing it for the first time, so I'm going to go over a few troubleshooting problems that you might have. First, if you're having this problem, it's very possible that you're buzzing too high, like this. Another problem that can cause it is that you're not creating a seal. You need to be able to make a seal with the mouthpiece of the didgeridoo. You need to be able to have all the air going into the instrument and not escaping out any other side of the mouthpiece. So make sure you have a proper seal, and also ensure that you are not buzzing too high. Not like that. So this is what it sounds like when I don't make a good seal. And this is when I do make a good seal. Well, another way that that might cause this problem is if you're actually putting too much pressure on the didgeridoo, trying to make too good of a seal. Listen closely. Notice when I apply more pressure, my embouchure collapses and I'm not able to maintain a clean buzz anymore. So you don't want to put too much pressure, but just enough pressure to make a firm seal. All right. Another thing that I found is that every didgeridoo, I mean, they're kind of uneven. If you look at the mouthpiece, it's not a complete circle for a lot of them. And so what you might find is that if you rotate the didgeridoo, you might find that there's a certain configuration, a certain rotation that allows you to make a better seal. So go ahead and experiment with that if you're having trouble. Just find I actually recommend doing this even if you are finding your drone, just to find the most comfortable place for your lips to be. Another thing is that everybody's mouth is different. So you might find, and you'll see other players where they're not putting the didgeridoo in the center, the direct center of their lips, but instead they have it to one side. I don't recommend going at the very side like this, but I do, it's most important that you just find what works for you. So if it works for you to go slightly off center, that's great, and it's fine. There's no real rule that you shouldn't do that. If you can, avoid going out the side of your lips, but in some people, that's the only thing that they're able to get work. So try everything else first before you resort to that. But it's something to experiment with. Just try adjusting the position of the didgeridoo on your face. Another thing is that everybody has a different position of their teeth. Like some people have an overbite like I do, and some people have an underbite. And so the angle of the didgeridoo actually can make a difference. And so for me, it's very comfortable for the didgeridoo to be angled down, and my lips, my face to be kind of pointed up, as you can see. But that might be totally different for you. And so I recommend just trying to change the angle and just find out where the air is just going straight through. You're trying to get that configuration where the air just really easily gets through the instrument. Lastly, well, you might be out of luck because some didgeridoos mouthpiece are just not a great size for playing out the start. They might, if it's too small, there's not really much you can do about that except like shave off the top of it. If it's too big, then some people use beeswax to construct a mouthpiece that conforms to their lips. It's all about whether you can make a seal, a proper seal all around your lips. If it's too big and air is escaping out all the sides, then you might look into something like that to try and make a smaller seal. Otherwise, if you got that didgeridoo for cheap, then it's time to invest in a more expensive instrument. Or you can go still on the cheap and just use a PVC pipe. It's super cheap and it definitely allows you to practice the didgeridoo. You can sand it down to make it more comfortable. In any case, you can find other didgeridoos that don't have the same problem if you don't feel like making your own mouthpiece. But there's lots of YouTube videos on how to do that if you want to do that. So after you figured out step one, you found your drone. That's fantastic. Now you have all the potential you need to be able to play the didgeridoo. Now step two is really learning how to shape the sound. The didgeridoo is all about the resonant chamber of your mouth and of your chest and this whole thing, your throat. And learning to control it, you can really make some fantastic sounds. So I'm going to demonstrate what I'm talking about. You notice the sound was kind of going E-O, E-O, and I was literally doing that with my face. Just I'm making the vowel shape E and then making the vowel shape O. Try that out and get the hang of being able to change the shape of the sound as you're playing. Once you've got that down, you can start doing some other more complicated things, such as tonguing. Tonguing is a way that you can stop the air of the sound. So if you say something like Tiny Tim, right? You're saying that word t, and when you make that sound, you're stopping the air from exiting your mouth. And you can do the same thing with the didgeridoo. And it doesn't have to necessarily be exactly the same sensation. It's not going to be at the exact same spot, but the concept is the same. It almost sounds more like a duh than a tuh, but you can even use the sound duh or even the sound ka to make different sounds. You probably couldn't hear all the difference, but I was making different consonant sounds to interrupt the flow of air. So that's a very important technique if you're wanting to make rhythms and improve just making your sound more interesting, is being able to shape the sound with your tongue as well as the tonguing technique that I just demonstrated. Step 3, once you've figured that out, you need to learn how to use your diaphragm while playing the didgeridoo. So the diaphragm is, it's what allows us to make that belly laugh, ha! And when you use your diaphragm in a wind instrument like the didgeridoo, you can make a short outtake of air and make sounds like this. That is what allows you to make an accent in your song, and it's just a super important way to add variety to your music. It takes some practice to be able to control it. Like you're definitely going to be able to make that ha sound, but being able to control it to do it quickly, such as in this example. That requires a little practice. So give yourself some time to figure out the diaphragm so that you can make those sounds. Step 4. Now you've conquered kind of the super basics of the didgeridoo. You've learned the drone, you've learned the diaphragm, you've learned how to shape the sound with your tongue. Kind of the next thing that is really necessary is to learn how to breathe. Now you may be thinking, I already know how to breathe, thank you very much. And I'm like, well, yeah, you do, but do you know how to circular breathe? So in didgeridoo playing, it's very critical to learn how to circular breathe, where you are able to play continuously without stopping for air. Many wind instrument musicians learn how to do this, and it's a really great talent to have, but for didgeridoo, it's almost essential. Some people can get away without it, but really, it's a very important technique to be able to learn. So let's try and figure out how that works. So the first thing to start out is to put the didge down. When you're circular breathing, you're not really breathing in and out at the same time. What you're doing is you're storing air inside your throat and mouth, and then while you stop air, you're stopping air from coming out of your throat, and you're just pushing the air out from that pocket. Then you breathe into your nose. That sounded very complicated, but it's not too bad. So the first step is to really be able to figure out that mechanism. So step 1, just put air in your cheeks like this. You're doing awesome. Next step is to breathe in while you have air in your cheeks. Like imagine you have a mouthful of water and you don't want to spill it. If you can do that, then you can circular breathe because you have air stored and it's ready to go. You just need to get the coordination to be able to push it out at the same time as you breathe in. And that's how circular breathing works. So I'm going to demonstrate. So I fill up my cheeks up with air, and I'm going to breathe out and breathe in through my nose at the same time. There you go. So that is what you can do to make this a little bit easier as you're learning, is to just try making a messy buzz like this. If it helps, you can use your hands to kind of, get the sensation. I'm trying to breathe in at the same time. I'm using my hands to push out the air at the same time as I'm breathing in. And now try to do it without your hands. I had too much air. If this is difficult for you, you can try using the straw method. There's other YouTube videos about that. But really, what you're trying to do is make a focused beam of air that's exiting your mouth at the same time as you're breathing into your nostrils. So you can make this a little bit easier by making it harder to push that air out. So it's easier to control. So if I put my finger on the end of the straw and fill up my cheeks, and then I uncover just a tiny portion of that straw. So I have a tiny leak that's bringing out the air, and while that's happening, I can then practice trying to breathe in the air. It's basically I've made my body, okay, we're just getting the air out of my cheeks, and then I can now focus on breathing in through my nose. So another technique is to increase the resistance of pushing out that air, is to put it inside, put the straw inside water. But you can YouTube other techniques if you're having trouble getting this technique down. Now, once you get to the point where you're able to blow air out of your cheeks, or rather just let air escape while you breathe in through your nostrils. Then it's time to bring in the didgeridoo. So first things first, let's just find our drone, and then we'll fill our cheeks with air, and then we'll stop breathing and just push the air out of our cheeks. You are almost there. Now you have just about half a second, that second, to be able to breathe in through your nostrils. And this is probably what's going to happen to you. Your drone's going to stop, but you're going to have air, and that means you're really close. And this is kind of the hard part. It's not a matter of just being able to just learn it instantly. You have to practice this transition to be able to get this right. And once you do, you can do this. Notice that the transition between, you can tell there's a difference, but there's not a huge difference, and there's no gap of air. And that just takes practice. And that's what I recommend doing, is to really nail down this step 4, learning to breathe, is to practice transitioning between breathing out and breathing in, and make that as smooth as possible. And even don't try to make it so the sound of breathing air out of your cheeks and breathing in through your nose, so that it doesn't sound different from itself. I'll show you what I mean. Notice that breathing out sounds different than when I'm, blowing air out of my lungs. And we kind of want to avoid that. I mean, it's okay for a different sound, but to get control of breathing, it's important to be able to just play and try and do breathing so that you don't have a huge variance in sound. And I'm not perfect at this, as you can tell, but this is what you're trying to even that out. So once you've got the basic concept of circular breathing, the next thing to work on is being able to play for indefinitely. And this takes some practice. Like at first, when I first started to be able to circular breathe, I could only do it for like 10 to 15 seconds. And you'll be able to go for almost indefinitely once you practice this enough. So the next step is learning rhythm, step 5. And this is where things get really interesting, because you've learned how to shape the sound, you've learned how to use your diaphragm and to circular breathe. And this is where the rubber meets the road, and you can actually use these rhythms to play along with songs. I really loved Didge Project. It's another YouTube channel. They have some fantastic rhythm tutorials, and I highly recommend them, if you're wanting to explore different rhythms to add to your repertoire of didgeridoo. We're going to do a simple rhythm, and it's going to be essentially do, 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 wah, do, wah. So the do meaning where you're using your diaphragm to push the air out, and the wah is your opportunity to breathe in. So do, do, wah, and it sounds like this. Let me slow that down a little bit. Isn't that so cool? Again, I recommend checking out the Didge Project for examples of more rhythms that just make this such a fun instrument to play. Well, you've made it through the basics. This is, been basically a crash course. I don't expect anyone to be amazing at the instrument by the end of this video, but now you know what you need to learn and what you need to research if you're wanting to pick up the didgeridoo. After that, there are tons of other advanced techniques, and one of these is being able to do growls and shouts, like or even just singing through the instrument. The world's your oyster. You can make really any sound into the instrument, experiment, and there are just tons of opportunities. Now, I've just briefly touched over these. If you are struggling with these concepts, or even if you're not, if you just want to deepen your knowledge of the didgeridoo, I learned a lot from Johnny Cope's didgeridoo course on Udemy. And I put links of all of that in the description below, and I recommend it if you are wanting to have a great experience with the Didge. He does a great job of explaining all the different sounds that you can make, and he does a lot of work on circular breathing if that's a tough topic. So really recommend that course. I'm going to be learning so many other instruments on this channel, and if you're interested in music and all these instruments, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching, and hope this is helpful for you.